my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back here on your Feel Good Breakfast Show. Indeed, we've only just gotten started, so if you are joining us, welcome, and let's get this day on the right note. Now, today we are celebrating how APSA has honestly just allowed all of South Africa and Africa to know that your story matters. So all throughout the day, we're going to be highlighting incredible stories, and one such story comes from a mother and daughter duo that genuinely doesn't just have faith, but also has resilience. And my friend, I'm talking about this beautiful family that has come together to fight addiction. And when we talk about genuinely understanding what it means for a mother and son to have that bond that no one else can understand unless you have it, this is where we are. And Wholehearted, a story of fighting addiction and honestly overcoming addiction with faith and resilience. We get to welcome today Nishani Ford as well as Joshua Ford. And we get to hear from Nishani as the mom to Joshua, how they overcame addiction, but more than anything else, how today they are standing strong and helping families all across South Africa. And friends, when we talk about Nishani, she's a TEDx speaker, an author, an advocate, and we get to hear this beautiful story because it does in fact matter. Everyone, let's welcome the Ford family. Hello. How are you guys?
Good morning.
Good, thanks.
That's good. Guys, thank you so much for coming and sharing your story with us. I think it's always so important for people to be able to hear the different stories, to be able to see themselves even, but more than anything else, be able to understand as well. And Nishani, I want to start with you because you're someone who has genuinely done such an incredible thing with your life. I mean, from being a GBV survivor to being a mother to an addict, you now sit here being a TEDx speaker, being an author and advocate. Let's talk a little bit just about, what it was that kind of gave you the strength to be able to have those defining moments, but also use those defining moments to just push you forward.
I think for me, the strength comes from love. I think if you're not operating from love, it's very difficult to have that. But the defining moments that came for me in my life were two. The first was the GBV moment. It was in 2007. I remember probably around 2 a.m. And I got up and I wrote the poem, Set Me Free. And I looked across the bed into the face of my abuser and the father of my children.
Sure.
And I knew at that moment that that was the beginning of the end.
Yeah.
It took me 3 years to exit because I wasn't financially stable, but I had to have an exit plan. And so went back to studying at 36 and all of those good things. And then the other defining moment came when Joshua went missing for 2 days. So I'm one of those moms with the missing child posters.
Sure.
And when we eventually got him back home, he sat on the bottom of my bed and he said, "Mom, help me. I'm on heroin." And that changed my life forever.
Sure.
He was a baby. He was only 13 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And Joshua, look at you now. All these years later, completely free of that addiction. Let's talk about that. What would you say were some of the lowest points of your addiction? And what made you decide that I want to turn my life around?
So I think some of the lowest points of my addiction was my time spent in prison as well as on the streets and stuff like that. And I think the turning point for my life was my daughter. So I grew up without a father and I wanted to make sure she didn't have to.
That's beautiful. And guys, with what you're just saying, and I think especially with what you said about how, you needed an exit plan and you couldn't leave because of financial constraints. I feel like you're speaking to so many women, sadly, around South Africa. And this is why I understand how so many women can see themselves through you, but also be able to have hope. Because you're someone who overcame it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I always say, don't wear your wishbone where your backbone ought to be. So it was hard. It was tough, but it's possible.
And with you saying it's possible, how did your belief system help you find purpose and strength, during those very tough times?
Yeah, my belief system is centered in my faith in Christ. I'm a Christ follower. And really it is about being compelled to want to make a difference, to want to help others along the way, into kind of a wholehearted life, because so many people are walking around broken, and I couldn't stand it. I had the audacity to believe that I wanted everything in life: joy, peace, my health, my mind.
Yeah.
And I fought for it. And I think hope for me is a big thing, because if you lose your hope, then like hopeless people are desperate people.
Yeah, that's very true. I'm someone who genuinely believes in hope, and that's why I think it's so important for us to spread it and allow others to have it, you know, in any way that we possibly can.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of parents who are going through what you went through, Nishani. Just speak to us a little bit about, you know, what it takes as a parent to possibly see your child through something like an addiction.
Well, firstly, addiction is hell. And I think that it happens. It's a pandemic in South Africa.
Yeah.
And it happens so much. It is a disease that is rooted in shame and in secrecy and in silence. And really, it's one of those things that that is so shameful. It ostracizes people.
Yeah.
It disconnects people. And to see my son going through that, it's sheer hell as a mother.
Yeah.
It's absolute hell.
And I can imagine, Joshua, for you, it was difficult as well. You know, there are people out there who are sadly struggling with addiction right now. And before we get to Wholehearted, and I think it's a book that's people are going to go out and buy it even more now because they understand exactly what the story is. But Joshua, what advice would you give to anyone who's struggling with addiction right now?
Not to give up and not to be hopeless. I mean, I think I was known as the hopeless case, even to a lot of rehabs. Didn't see a way out for me. I didn't see a future for myself because all I knew was addiction.
Oh, wow.
And you're going to bump your head and fail a few times. Just don't give up.
Yes. Wow, guys. I'm so excited for you to just continue changing lives because I feel like that's what this book is doing. Let's get into it. What do we need to know about Wholehearted and how does it open people up?
Yeah. So when Joshua sat on my bed and he was 13 years old, it took us on a 10-year downward spiral into his addiction, which was sort of 7 rehabs, 22 failed overdoses, and 4 hospitalizations,
Sure.
long-term hospitalizations. And while he got all the help that he possibly could have, because there are people around him that could have helped him as an
Yeah.
addict, there was nobody around me as the person who loved an addict and around our family
Yeah.
as people who loved addicts. And there was no help for us. And we were kind of left on the roadside, you know, like Samaritan. And so Wholehearted, the book, is not just a story, but it is a resource for people who love addicts, who also need to heal, who also need to have a journey through this trauma because it is
Wow.
so traumatic.
Yes. And in terms of you just wanting to really share your story, is it because of that where you felt like you had no one and you want, you know, a little bit of something that's going to help people to understand that they're not alone in it?
They're not alone in it. I think the opposite to addiction is sobriety, but it's also connection. Connection to yourself, connection to your God, and connection to each other.
That's beautiful. Nishani and Joshua, thank you so much for
Thank you
coming
so
and
much
sharing
for
your
having
story. Of course, you guys are incredible. I mean, it's one thing to go through a journey like that, but it's another to take it and then want to help others with it. So your story matters already just on its own, but you're making other people's stories matter even more because of how you're impacting them. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh, my word. This is what it's about today, Expresso family. This is where we get to have the moments together of really understanding what the story is of our fellow man, what they've gone through. And just, I think the most beautiful thing is also getting to know just how much your story is able to impact someone else's life. It is Wholehearted. It is, of course, a story of overcoming addiction with faith and resilience. You can get the book absolutely anywhere. And this is where we say it is always so incredible to see people be able to take their pain and turn it into something that helps others. There's so much more still to come here on your Feel Good Breakfast show because we are getting into more stories throughout the day. But right now, I want to cross over to Cape TZ for Sheezy. Ewan, what's going on?